One of the most important people in my life was my grandfather. He helped to shape the person that I am today. And he passed away far too young at the age of 69. But luckily, I was able to have my first 13 years with him, and he was in my life consistently throughout that time. And during that time, I watched him struggle with Parkinson's disease. It was something that he was diagnosed in his early 40s with, and he suffered, but he never let it slow him down. In fact, Parkinson's disease and my grandfather was the reason that I wanted to get into the health field to begin with. That is what really sparked my passion for medicine when I was younger. And because of that, it is a topic that has remained on my heart and something that I'm always up to date with and trying to find new research and see what else is being done in Parkinson's care. And so when I recently learned about Rock Steady Boxing, and that it is a nonprofit fitness organization specifically for Parkinson's patients from ages in their early years, some being as young as 20 years old, up until their 80s, 90s, and so on. I said, this is something that I want to learn about. So the head trainer and the educator, Chris Timberlake, is on today's episode. Yes, this episode is a little bit different. And if you think this isn't really a topic that interests me, I'm going to encourage you to still stick around, because just the passion that she has and the emotion that comes out from this story and what Rock Steady Boxing is all about, I think can really help it impact all of us. Whether you know somebody with Parkinson's disease or not, I still think that you're going to walk away feeling very excited that you listened into this episode. And I'm not gonna lie, I am very, very raw. This episode, this interview brought out a lot of emotion that I did not anticipate. So before we jump into the episode though, I do wanna ask you for one favor. This is a free podcast, but there is one small payment, and it's not money. All I ask you to do is to subscribe to the channel and leave a review. And if you're like, Kendall, I love hanging out with you during this time, but I want to get to know you even more, and I want you to help me hit my fitness goals, then what you can do is go to fitwomensweekly.com, which is the house of my online strength studio, Fit Women's Weekly Live. And you can join for free for 14 days. And then you can see what Fit Women's Weekly is all about, and if I can help you take your fitness to the next level, which I think that I can. And there are also other ways to help support the channel and to support the podcast, and I will have those down in the show notes. So let's go ahead and jump into my conversation with Christine, and I hope that you guys enjoy this topic and this conversation as much as I did. Thank you so much. Oh my God, Rock Steady Boxing. What a freaking cool and amazing. I don't do a lot of fitness stuff outside of what I do because it's competition, but this is not competition. And I think it is the coolest thing I've ever seen. So welcome, and kind of just tell me, first off, what is your role with Rock Steady and how did you get involved? And then I want to talk specifically of like, what is Rock Steady Boxing?
Absolutely. Well, first and foremost, thank you for having me today on this podcast. I've been really excited about it. I am so fired up about the mission of Rock Steady, and I have been for 18 years. I'm currently the Director of Training and Education for Rock Steady Boxing headquarters here in Indianapolis. And we just finished up a training camp last week. Thursday and Friday, we have people come to our what we call Mecca.
Mm-hmm.
We're headquarters for about 850 locations currently.
Which is so sad, to be honest, that we need to have that many facilities around the country.
That's absolutely true. But to me, 850 seems like a lot, but we're reaching just the tip of the iceberg as far as the people that are diagnosed with Parkinson's disease and need resources that are, in addition to medication and amazing neurologists, they need places where they can go where fitness professionals understand what type of exercise, how much exercise, what kind of intensity.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my goal, is to help develop programming and education, continuing education, to help infuse these coaches, empower them, teach them the proper ways of working with someone with Parkinson's disease, which is very complex, as you know, through your personal experience with a family member. It is a progressive, incurable, degenerative condition that without the proper resources can really march ahead very quickly.
Mm-hmm. When I was
And
younger, I never understood it. I would just see him shaking all the time, but then he would fall asleep while we were just sitting there talking. And at the time, it was just like, oh, look at Papa, he's always tired. And now as an adult, I look back and I'm like, I can only imagine how fatigued his body was from the constant movement 24 hours a day that he suffered. And I never put that together, obviously, when I was young or a teenager. And it just blows my mind.
how many calories was he burning? And
Right.
a lot of folks that get into that dyskinetic state, that constant movement, they're hypertonic. Their body fat is low and their muscle tone is so high and they're rigid. So that's just one little piece of Parkinson's disease. But my involvement began, 24 years ago. I became a care partner for Thomas. And Thomas was diagnosed with Parkinson's at age 34.
34. And this was your husband, correct?
At the time.
At
Yeah,
the time.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I'm still his primary care partner.
Uh-huh.
Which is wonderful that I'm able to be that for him.
Yeah.
And he's actually doing really, really well.
That's fantastic. But 34, I'm just curious of what kind of early symptoms my grandfather was, I think, in his early 40s, which at that time was very, very young. So 34, wow.
So young onset Parkinson's disease, it can be, there is even juvenile Parkinsonism. There is, under 40 is 40 and between 40 and 50 is still considered young onset because the average age of diagnosis for people with Parkinson's, according to the Parkinson Foundation, is about mid-60s. So Thomas's symptoms were very easily dismissed as overuse injuries, tendinitis. He and I were always athletes, running marathons together and training and softball, all the things, that people that age would be doing. And he had a sore shoulder, a stiff shoulder, and couldn't quite hit the ball over the fence like he used to. And to him, that was a tragedy. But to me, it's like, oh, we have to adapt. You're in your mid-30s, you're not 20 anymore. And then he started to run with me long distances and his toes were curling. And he's like, this is really weird. I'm like, oh, you need, potassium, whatever. I'm trying to diagnose something.
Sure.
And the symptoms started to add up. His posture started to change. He started to shuffle when he walked a little bit, just a little bit, tiny bit. But all these things together added up, and we went to a neurologist finally. And initially we thought he had either ALS, which was super scary, Wilson's disease, MS. So they take all these symptoms, and even neurologists, it's a process of elimination because there isn't a blood test or an x-ray that is a definitive diagnosis to this day. The only way that they definitively know that it's Parkinson's disease is post-mortem, when they can look at that brain. So it is, for many people, is a long process of elimination of things and a long process of living in fear. So we really want to get those educational pieces out to people who are young onset. They're probably still in the workforce with little kids and trying to make it work and probably experiencing a lot of fear. So we did have that moment where we were really afraid. And when we got the Parkinson's diagnosis in 2000, it was almost a relief in a way.
Just to have an answer.
Just to have an answer so we can start putting a plan together, because I'm like A-type personality. We're going to handle it. My dad's a Marine, and that's just, you just gut it out, you figure it out. But Parkinson's doesn't play that way. As soon as he was diagnosed, it was almost like these uninvited symptoms started to appear as if they were given permission. Like they just came full force as soon as he was diagnosed. And medication did help, but it did create side effects. A
Right.
lot of it of medication causes sleepiness, constipation, all kinds of things. So we found, well, Thomas was one of the very first participants in Rocksteady Boxing in 2006 when it was launched in October.
Okay.
And I was very skeptical. I'm a hard sell. And I was very protective of him because everyone's got advice,
Right.
smoke cigarettes, drink more coffee, get off your medications, all these suggestions well-meaning people have. So when somebody said, we're going to go boxing, I was like, yeah, right.
What?
You're going to cause Parkinson's. You're going to make it worse. So I stepped back
Hmm.
and I watched this very depressed athlete, man in his prime. I watched him get his life back through this exercise. Kendall, nothing else had changed about his daily routine to cause improvement other than the introduction of exercise. And it wasn't just any exercise, it was intense, boxers-based curriculum with very high expectations of form. And it was 90 minutes, not 90 minutes of high intensity, but sections of it were increased flexibility training that is specific to Parkinson's disease. It attacks certain areas of the body, like the posterior chain. I mean, it's wrecking most of the posterior chain because everything that Parkinson's is mostly anterior in that kyphotic posture. So I jumped on board immediately. And I was a professional jewelry designer. I did one-of-a-kind pieces for
I read
jewelry
that.
stores.
That's so cool.
Well, I'm an artist at heart, and I was raised an artist by an artist, and that's my happy place. Not a boxing gym, I'll tell you.
But you have
These
that
hands,
athletic background.
yeah, I'm a weird combination. My mother's a fine artist, and my dad's a Marine. So I don't know. I just Rocksteady became very important to me because I saw the impact it was having on people. Even when we had 5 or 6 people, that was the very first location. There was a magic there that I've been involved in a lot of sports over the years. And there was a different kind of intention. It was very much intrinsically driven.
And I'm sure it was
And
so nice for all of those athletes, we'll call them athletes, for showing up to
yes,
have
they
a
are
community,
athletes.
right? Like, yeah, those athletes to show up, but to have this community of people going through the same things that they are, that they can be like, hey, I'm having a really shitty day today, but I have you guys and y'all understand it. So let's do this.
Absolutely. And it was beyond a support group. It was kind of an unspoken, we're just going to work out next to each other, and you open the door and you cussed, so I'm going to just start cussing
Please.
too.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
I mean, it was kicking ass.
Yeah.
It was not a clinic, and it was not a clinical environment, because as a care partner, these folks spend a lot of time in a clinic.
And feeling like a patient. And as a
As a patient.
35-year-old man, he wanted to feel a bit like himself.
Yes, and tapping into something that I felt like in a lot of folks that I got to know, this person became dormant in the face of Parkinson's disease, and the person became silent, and the personality. Sometimes people with Parkinson's have a mask-like expression where they can't, their face doesn't emote what they're thinking.
Right.
And to the world, that can be perceived as disinterest or apathy. But that person is fully present and has lots of things to say and share and do. So that's part of our training to coaches and volunteers, that don't assume that person is not fully present just because you're not getting the benefit of the typical response. They are fully present. They just have more difficulty communicating that. And the world isn't kind to people who don't move quickly and speak quickly and put their money away quickly. And Rocksteady is kind of um, it's a club that honors perfectly imperfect people.
Mhm.
And, that's even, to me, that's greatness. And every time someone walks into this building or any gym across the world, we honor that. And we're like, well, we're going to kick your ass today and you're going to like it.
I love it. And
What we're
having
not
that
going
sense
to
of, I just know with my grandfather, we would be sitting around watching TV or just talking, and his trimmers would flare up and be really bad. But we called him the piddler. He had a huge garden in the backyard,
do.
or he had a shed that he made from scrap wood he found on the side of the road. He would go find pecans and just crack them, or find a vacuum cleaner on the side of the road and take it back and piddle and fix it. And those times, he could do it with the smallest, having that like little bit of focus.
Oh,
And when he
yeah.
passed away, I truly think that doing those blue collar, very intense skills for a 69-year-old man with Parkinson's disease, when he passed away,
Sure.
he had the heart of a 40-year-old still.
Oh my gosh, that's so beautiful. Wouldn't he have loved to have some boxing gloves
He
on?
he would, and he was in the Navy in his younger days. So I'm hearing the story and I'm almost crying because I'm like, I wish they had this
Yeah.
back in
And
the
there's some
90s.
there's something to be said about neuromuscular training. I mean, we're not just putting someone in front of a boxing bag. We're
Mhm.
asking for complex combinations and we're
Mhm.
challenging them cognitively in addition to, the body itself.
Mhm.
So there are many layers of challenge to try to breathe life into people and remind them of what they're capable of.
Mhm.
Certain things are not going to be automatic anymore. They lose what's called automaticity.
Mhm.
Just swinging your arm, um, big steps, things that come normal aren't going to be easy anymore. And we face that head on. We're like, buddy, it's going to be hard now, but we're going to try to give you the tools to adjust to your new normal, and
Mhm.
you're still going to have goals, and you're going to meet them, you're going to exceed them, and you're going to set new goals. And people with degenerative, progressive, incurable disease need to hear that life doesn't stop. It doesn't stop. It doesn't have to. There are people out there that don't have resources, and Kendall, that is my mission. That's my why, is to reach people like your grandpa.
Mhm.
It's not the old days anymore. We know that exercise works. We know that it's a combatant to Parkinson's and is important as medication in addition to, not instead of, but all those solutions working together can help people live like Thomas, 24 years. He's still driving. I'm
For
not going to
him.
say it's been easy,
Sure.
but people need to see guys like him. He's 60 now and he's entering a new phase of his life. And applause to those folks who are in there in the trenches fighting, because this disease is no joke.
Right.
It
So
can.
what's the story behind Rocksteady? I mean, who decided boxing? Who decided to start it to begin with?
So it was kind of I think it was, and it really was a God thing to me, because think of the likelihood of these three individuals coming together. So in Indianapolis, there was a Marion County prosecutor named Scott Newman, brilliant man, really was an intellectual, was on the news a lot. He's very controversial. He stood up for what was right, and sometimes you know that makes you stand apart. But I remember Scott back in the day, and he was always on TV, and he was taking the big cases, and he was trying a case about a drug dealer who a little child was caught in the crossfire during a drug deal and killed. And Scott was trying to put this guy away forever. And he was in the courtroom and he slammed his hand down on the table to make a point, and he saw that his thumb was twitching. That was the first time that emotion can bring out,
Mhm.
stress can bring out symptoms, and that's what happened. So his Parkinson's came at the same time Tom's. Scott was 35 or 36 years old at the top of his game.
Mhm.
He was on his way to be mayor of Indianapolis. I mean, he was on the fast track, and Parkinson's sidelined him. And he went kind of underground for a while. He was on TV a lot. He did what we call the hand in pocket phase, where you're
Mhm.
hiding.
Sure.
And he had a friend that was Golden Gloves boxer. I think he was in the Army. And he said, "Hey, we're going to start boxing." And Scott was on board. And so they worked out in Scott's apartment complex gym in the basement. There was a heavy bag.
Mm.
So that was Vince. Vince was helping Scott learn how to box. And then Scott, being a visionary, said, "This is helping me. I feel better than I used to feel before I started to exercise." And Vince was kicking his butt. No joke. He didn't know
I
anything
mean,
about
boxing is an
Parkinson's.
amazing workout for anybody. So yeah, for sure.
It's the hardest thing I've ever done. And so Scott, in his brilliance, said, "I want this for everyone that has Parkinson's because it's helping me." So he said, "I need a female boxer because I want someone who's going to have a lot of compassion." So he found his girlfriend at the time was a Fox News reporter here in Indianapolis, and the camera person's name was Christy Rose Fulmar. Christy Rose Fulmar was on break from being a professional boxer,
Wow.
had won a world title before that, but she was pregnant. So she was working as a camera person at Fox News, and Scott's girlfriend said, "Hey Scott, there's this girl at Fox that I think she boxes." So Scott got with Christy, and they founded Rocksteady Boxing. In the spring of 2006, they wrote the bylaws, and Scott called Christy and he said, I want to talk to you. I want to offer you a job." She thought she was in trouble. And he offered her the job, and he said, "Yeah, I want a tough, badass, beautiful woman, compassionate, and you're my person." And she said, "Okay, I'll take the job, but here's this thing. I'm pregnant." So Christy's daughter was actually born the month before Rocksteady opened its doors. So there was this little baby in a basket,
Hmm.
and her name is KO.
Oh, how funny. That's
Yeah.
great.
So that's how Rocksteady started. And I walked in first class in January of 2007, and it had been up and running for a couple months.
Mhm.
And I walked in and I saw these people, including Thomas, rolling on the floor, getting their butts kicked, boxing like straight up boxers. It was just like a scene out of Rocky.
Mhm.
There was no coddling these folks. She was just training them like boxers, and it worked. We grew from 5 people to oh gosh, in that location, 120 people. We outgrew the location. We lost our location. We moved into a fitness facility. We doubled our size again, and then we moved to where we are now. It's a 12,000 square foot facility for our entire staff and all of our classes. We have 24 classes a week here, running training camp here, and we serve about 200 plus members on any given time. But this is headquarters for the rest of the organization.
Is it just for Parkinson's
Mhm.
people, or can also like caregivers or family members come in as well? Because
So
they sometimes
we
need that extra love too.
absolutely, we offer a free membership, one membership, and non-transferable. We try to designate someone that's going to accompany the boxer, so we can teach them the ropes. We can teach them how to box. We can, get to know them. We don't really like new people coming in with a person every week. Then we have to
Sure.
train them again. So we try to keep that non-transferable and
And it makes it
designated.
sound like important, like the community aspect, that family aspect seems very
Oh,
important.
they're usually the ones that are telling that person to get their butt to the gym. And
Right.
sometimes For many of our members, they're not able to drive anymore, so the care partner is completely key
Mhm.
to that person attending. We see people in all stages of and phases of Parkinson's disease, from asymptomatic, early, young onset, just diagnosed that day,
Mhm.
to people who are in end stage of life. Not necessarily Parkinson's disease, but it's the other issues, age-related issues that people have. So our door is open to everyone, and we do require that that person has a willing and able care partner, so we can make sure that our ratios are safe,
Mhm.
and that there aren't folks left unattended if they're fall risk or they pass out or whatever other issues they may have. We do a full screening and assessment before someone participates in class.
Mhm. You mentioned the different stages of Parkinson's. Have there ever actually, like, are there set stages of Parkinson's disease? And if so, what are those?
There used to be a staging called the Honen-Yar, and
Mhm.
it's not very rare. It's not very commonly used anymore. I think it's being phased out. It's more of a clinical discussion of
Mhm.
the phases, stages, and it's 1 through 5. But we use from preclinical stage to mild, moderate, and advanced.
Gotcha.
So those are kind of the stages, but there's so much subjectivity in
Mhm.
staging. We really don't like to stage here.
Mhm.
We like to say, "Oh, Frank, you're at the 10:30 class,"
Right.
or,
Oh, so
not
each class,
label
they're
it.
kind of paired with people of that same ability?
I think that's key to
Mhm.
successful goal setting,
Mhm.
because if you have someone that's young onset that really needs high intensity, and then you have someone who maybe confined to a wheelchair for whatever reason, working those two out side by side may have psychological implications for one or the other, not
Sure.
keeping up or being afraid that their Parkinson's is going to progress.
Mhm.
Um, so I think part of the key to success is matching people with likability in classes so they can do the same activities and be equally challenged.
Sure.
Many of our affiliate locations start with one big class, as we did,
Mhm.
but we ended up splitting those classes so we could customize the workouts more appropriately.
Mhm.
So,
Gotcha.
yeah.
Has there been actual any research on physical fitness or mobility on Parkinson's treatment and how it helps to prolong longevity or decrease symptoms? Is there actually any, like, data on that yet?
In 2006, I would have said no, but thankfully today, there's a mountain of research proving that intense exercise is a combatant to Parkinson's disease in many ways. The Parkinson Foundation and Rocksteady and other Parkinson's organizations work together to develop um, exercise recommendations for people with Parkinson's across the board. And it is 150 minutes of moderate to vigorous activity for people with Parkinson's, which is more than um, general population. Older population is 75 minutes of vigorous or 150 minutes of mild to moderate. So it's a different dose.
Mhm.
It's a different type of dose for people with
Mhm.
Parkinson's. It's more intense, and there's neuromuscular activity that has to happen, flexibility and balance training,
And why
in
is it that
addition to
it's more? Is it just to help, also to help kind of fatigue the muscles so that for therapy, like, it helps to them to relax at night, or
well,
why the
I think
difference?
that's part of it. I think it's part of it, but what we're hoping is that we're creating new neural pathways
Mhm.
for the body to communicate with the brain. And that's what's short circuiting with Parkinson's disease. The brain is not connecting with those. Dopamine
Right.
is the perfect kind of oil to a car
Mhm.
in the simplest form of explanation.
Right.
And the dopamine is not performing its job correctly when Parkinson's gets involved. There's a there's a barrier,
Mhm.
and we want to try to break through that. that barrier, the brain and the body is not working together. So you
Right.
see the ratchety movements and you see the tremor and the motor symptoms, but the non-motor symptoms are as problematic, if not more problematic, than the ones that people see. Shuffling gaits, tremor,
Mhm.
stooped posture. Those are the things that we can see, but under the surface, we've got depression, anxiety, constipation, breathing issues, speech issues. Um, the depression, anxiety in particular, is a big barrier to participation in life. And
Yeah.
it isn't just a reaction to despairing over the diagnosis. It's a chemical. Dopamine makes you feel good.
Right.
And a large percentage of the dopamine is malfunctioning by the time someone is diagnosed.
Mm.
So a person is really getting hit hard by the science of it. It's
Right.
real. It's not just getting over it.
Right.
It's chemical.
Right. I remember
So
I
the
did a sixth grade research paper on Parkinson's. I wanted to be
Oh
a
my
doctor. Yeah. When I tell you, like, yes, I was pre-med in college and everything. It all goes back to how important this man was in my life.
God,
And so in sixth
I
grade,
know.
so in sixth grade, I wrote a paper on Parkinson's and really studied it. And that's when I learned about dopamine. And for a 12-year-old, 11-year-old, you're thinking like, well, if the brain's not producing enough dopamine, why can't you just give a shot? Like I could not understand it, but the body is such an incredible thing. And it makes sense now talking through this with you that intense exercise is going to help also increase endorphins, which is another happy drug in our body. So if you're
Yes,
not getting those from your dopamine, then I'm assuming that big dose of endorphins you're getting from your high intensity exercise is going to help with their mental state.
it's definitely part of it, and the community helps process that depression and
Mhm.
isolation.
Sure.
Isolation is a killer, and there is dopamine, that synthetic dopamine that people take, Cinemet,
Mhm.
which is great. It works great, but it doesn't last very long in the body, and it wears off. And
Mhm.
the more progressed Parkinson's is, the shorter window of functioning a person has.
Mhm.
So whatever we can do to keep that window open, there are now surgical interventions. Deep brain stimulation therapy is becoming very common. Focused ultrasound, an external pump that people wear, and a little fanny pack that delivers dopamine directly into the small intestine where
Hmm.
it's taken up
Mhm. Almost like an
by the
insulin
body.
pump.
It's like an insulin pump.
Interesting.
There's a tube, but they're constantly working on. They're now working on a subcutaneous, like a little patch for dopamine. It's
Mhm.
not perfected yet or approved,
Mhm.
but that's on the horizon. So bottom line to me is there are lots of opportunities for intervention with Parkinson's disease, and we really can't say that about all of the neuromuscular or neuromotor diseases out there. Parkinson's has lots of opportunity: speech therapy, physical therapy, occupational therapy.
Mhm.
People are going to acupuncture, whatever works for you. Gather your group of experts,
Mhm.
your team, to help you manage this. And it's very likely that people can live a long and meaningful life with proper disease management. Big part of that is exercise. Get up and get out into
Right.
the world.
And sometimes that's so hard to say or to do and say when you're dealing with depression and anxiety
I
because you
can't
don't want to
imagine.
get up, but to get you at some point, yeah, if you can get up and just get started, it gets that ball rolling and just
Yeah,
the feel good stuff
there
getting better and better.
there are videos rather on our website that are really inspirational. You'll see people of all ages and ability levels talking about how important it is. And I think hearing people that have Parkinson's actually giving testimonials about the importance of exercise. And there are so many different programs with, aside from Rocksteady, if it isn't for you to go box, There's Dance for Parkinson's. Their online Delay the Disease is strictly videos that you can consume, and most of them are very affordable. Rocksteady is not covered by insurance currently. It's one of the big questions we're getting. But in all honesty, it's we're a gym and we're not a clinical facility. It would change the way we do things to enter into that
Sure.
relationship. If you know, you probably know.
Sure.
Uh,
Yes.
yeah. So we're pushed back on that because we try to find ways to subsidize those folks that can't afford it, and we've got a lot of work to do in reaching underserved populations, minority populations that don't have access. So we've got some work to do, but we're prioritizing those particular parts of the Parkinson's community.
Now, I want to ask here in a second of anyone that's listening to this going like, oh my goodness, somebody in my life could benefit from this. How can they find a box nearby for them? Before I do not want to forget, because you had mentioned the videos on your channel. So I went over to mediflix.com, which has a lot of y'all's videos and workout videos. And there is a spunky lady, I believe it was you with her in the introduction, with bright pink reddish hair, getting ready
Cynthia.
Cynthia. Please, if you ever see Cynthia anytime soon, she is a rock star. That woman, I'm like, I don't care if you have Parkinson's or not. I want to be like you when I'm older. She was so spunky.
She actually worked for the circus before she became an interior designer. But on the Parkinson's Foundation Fitness Fridays, we've created videos for people, and they're free. And they're 40-minute videos with different types of people with Parkinson's disease. So Parkinson Foundation is another way for folks to get really, really valuable, usable, and free resources for folks with Parkinson's.
Awesome. And then if anyone's interested in trying out Rocksteady Boxing and finding out if they have a facility near them, how do they do that?
Well, let me tell you. Our website is www.rocksteadyboxing.org, and you can put your zip code in the little drop-down menu, find a class, and there'll be a map of the United States. We also have international locations, but we have locations in every state in the nation. Okay. Some more than others, and there are areas where there are no Rocksteadies. And if there isn't a Rocksteady and you're interested in being trained as a coach, so
I was just thinking I would love to somehow be able to connect more and work with you guys.
Oh my gosh, Kendall, you would be a great Rocksteady coach.
I would, yeah, I'm definitely going to look more into this when we're off.
Yeah, it's great. We appreciate the opportunity to talk about it today.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And then anybody, because you guys are a nonprofit, so aside from looking for classes for themselves, is there any way that people can also just support the cause?
Oh, absolutely. Opportunities on our website to donate or, support a local gym in your area for sure. Our affiliates all are driven by the mission, and nobody's getting rich off of this thing. Let me tell you, though,
as someone who used to own a gym, you don't get rich off of just owning any kind of gym.
No, but what a difference we're making in people's lives. I appreciate talking to you today, Kendall. This is great. I think about your grandpa, and
thank you.
When you look at those videos, you probably see a little bit of him there.
I do. Thank you so much. That was so great, Chris. That was awesome to talk to you. What did you guys think? Pretty cool lady, right? The passion behind it and just how great of an organization this is. I actually did look it up. Charleston has multiple locations for Rocksteady Boxing. I've already told Dan, Dan's my husband, that when my schedule slows down a little bit, because we've got a lot on my calendar right now, that I have the intentions of seeing if I can donate my time and my training and become and become involved in Rock Steady Boxing here in Charleston. I think there's actually one even just a couple miles from my house. So I'm very, very excited to get a little bit more involved with that. And you can too. All you have to do is go to the Rock Steady website. You can also follow them on Instagram, and I will have all that down in the show notes. And so make sure that you support them, and you can also help to support Fit Women's Weekly. Go check out fitwomensweekly.com. You can try out Fit Women's Weekly Live for free for 14 days. Make sure, if you're not following me on the socials, why not? I post basically every single day, and it is Kendall Boyle Fitness. And then you can also make sure to subscribe to the podcast, leave a review, and I will be back on Friday for our Fit Quickie chit chat. If you have a question that you would like answered on the episode, just leave it down in the show notes or email me at kendall@fitwomensweekly.com.